Hello there. So what I wanted to show you was how I figure out the order of operations for sewing something. When I do this for myself, I usually do it in like my own code. So I do some really sloppy sketches just to help myself like work out what it is that that needs to happen first. And in the case of this flounce dress, there's a few things, like there's certain things that have to happen before other things. And there's a whole bunch of things that even though they have to happen before other things, they can happen at different times. So and then I started to come up with like a coding system, like a key. Let me switch to the other camera for this. So I was like testing out different colors and things to try and figure out how to show what's what. And I haven't nailed it down yet, but I've been at it for a few hours. about 3/16 from the edge, or 3/8, just so long as the two rows of basting don't touch or cross each other, it works fine. So what I was thinking I would do to show that on our pieces that we have here, see if I can get this to move so that this camera can see it. So what I was thinking is, for that, I would use a red pen to show a basting stitch. And then, again, these are half scale, so I think I like using this little ruler better. So I don't want my seam allowance to get gathered, so I'll leave that alone. And maybe on my full scale piece, I won't start gathering right up against my seam allowance, so I won't gather my seam allowance, and maybe I'll skip like 1/4 of an inch past my seam allowance, and then I'll start running my basting stitch. And of course my pen decides not to work. So again, this is where I'm gonna end. I'm doing this with a pen, so I can stop my stitch, but about 1/4 of an inch away from where I want to stitch the flounce to the dress. And then I run a little basting stitch. And then I run a second row of basting stitch right next to that. But inside my seam allowance. It's okay if it gets outside your seam allowance. Way to do that is yet, but what you're looking at here is the right side of the center back with the zipper sewn in. Let me move so I'll do close up, and then I'll kind of move my paper around so you can see a close-up view. I hope. So sewing the godet into the center back is one of those things where I feel like it could happen one of two ways. And I started to draw it one way, and then I decided I'm going to use myself as a guinea pig, and I'm going to try and sew it, and then I'm going to decide which way I think will be easier for you. So, oops, I dropped it. So this was my start of my illustration for installing the invisible zipper down the center back piece. And then my start of finishing this bottom part. And then my start of my illustration of installing the godet. So I was thinking sew it to the center back piece right here first, so that then this will hang down and sort of be an extension of this piece. And then I can attach, when I have the whole side built, I can attach it there. But then I thought maybe it's easier to sew this seam all in one fell swoop. So maybe I install the side back and then put this in last. So that's one of the things that I thought I would guinea pig on myself. But so I'm putting this together, but I think I just need to start start sewing. But I just wanted to let you know that when you go to do your final project, this is part of what you need to do. You need to think about how am I going to sew this stuff together so that it'll work. So it's easier to sew the invisible zipper into the center back when everything is flat. So that's why I'm doing that first. And I think the actual, like the very easiest thing to do, let me find my ugly sketches. So I think the most straightforward thing to do will be to sew the lining together. So this is my really ugly rough sketch of sewing the lining together. So what I have here, this is the center front piece. And then these are the side front pieces. And then these are the side back pieces. And then these are the center back pieces. And what I'm thinking is we sew all those pieces together. And then we put the dress together. So one of the things we have to do is build the side. So this is a side front bodice and this is a side back bodice, and this needs a gather stitch like what I drew on the flounce pieces here, so that they get sewn together at the side seam, and then they get gathered, and then they get attached to the belt, and then the flounce gets gathered and tacked to the belt, and then the side skirts get sewn together at the side seam and then tacked down the center front. And then I have my little sketch about installing the center back zipper. So either of these sketch that I had drawn over there. Far away again. So on my notebook, this is this that I had drawn. And then for putting the, I have this attached, but I kind of show in my own kind of chicken scratch way how all this needs to go together. Let me zoom in so you can see. I'm going to make sure it's nice and crisp for you. So again, like I said, I do it in my special chicken scratch, right? And it makes sense to me, but I don't know how much sense it makes to you. And then once I have, in here I have little notes attached to side. And then once the whole front is sewn together and our whole self is sewn together and the whole lining is sewn together, then what I have here in this sketch is, zoom in, I have that we would stitch around the armhole, but we leave the shoulder open. So this is showing the lining side, but we're imagining that on the other side, what we can't see is the self, and they're right sides together. So when we look at it, it looks like it's inside out. And so I have sew around the armhole, leave the shoulder open. So leave the shoulder open there and there. And then sew around the neck, and then stop, skip the shoulder, sew around the armhole, and then stop, skip the shoulder, and then sew around the back. And then stop. And I actually think before I do all that, so I have sew lining together, and then where in my written instructions where I have sew lining to self, I start actually with the center back zipper. And you have to kind of do this weird little maneuver when you're attaching the lining to the self at the zipper. That's reminiscent of when we attach the facing to the skirt number 2, the final skirt in 1A. So I would do that first, because then we kind of have to roll the zipper and the lining before we sew around the back. So this is the back neck, and like I said, skip shoulder around the armhole, skip shoulder, front, skip shoulder, armhole. Then what I would do is clip, grade, and then press everything, and then understitch the seam allowance to the lining. So it was relatively fast for me to stitching that I want you to do at this moment in this illustration is in black, and the stitching that you should already see is in pencil. And so, like I said, I don't think that's showing up so great. Let me do the close-up camera. So the zipper is brown and the self is black. Stitching is the one that you did in this step, and so it's pencil here. And then the stitching that I want you to do in this step is black. But like I said, I think this will show up a lot better in person. And then once I have this mapped out, I'll be able to do it in Illustrator, but that'll take me another, I don't know, 40 to 80 hours depending. And I usually lowball it when I do those estimates. I think, oh, this should take me 20 hours, and it takes a lot longer. So I don't think I'm going to be able to get this done like right away. So I'll just start with an Illustrator. I won't be able to get it done right away. So I'm going to just start by doing the sewing videos. And hopefully that'll be enough to help you. So I'll have the videos where I'm sewing it, and then I'll have my actual samples that I can also show you in class. But if you have all of your pieces cut out and you're ready to go, it'll be a lot easier for me to coach you in class. Cutting out things, I think, is something that's easy for you to do at home, whereas the actual sewing of this, you'll want some coaching, which I can do better in class. Hopefully the videos will be enough, but just in case. And then, like I said, the main reason I wanted to show you that I spend time doing this kind of thing is because I want you to be aware that this is part of the process of doing your final project. And I'll guide you through how to sew this flounce dress, and it'll go easily for you, but hopefully you'll be able to recognize while you're following my instructions that had you done something in a different order, you would have gotten yourself into a bit of a jam and you'd have to take things out. And so these are the things that you have to test out. This is why for your final dress, it's really important that you do a muslin. It doesn't have to be muslin. You can sew it out of your fashion fabric, but your first crack at sewing it isn't going to come out so well. And you're going to have to take things apart, and you're going to run into things where you can't figure out how the heck the thing is supposed to sew together. So, yeah, I just wanted to make you aware of this part of the design process where someone has to figure out how on earth to put the thing together. So I hope that helps, and I hope it's going to help you think about how to start processing and designing for your final project.